right, everybody. Well, we're ready to head into our last paper of the day. Richard McCready, who joins us from Howard County, Maryland School District. And luckily, the airline with whom you were flying this morning was able to sort of get you here. I know it was touch and go for a while, but we're delighted that you're here with us. Rich is going to talk to us about teaching and assessing creativity. So please welcome.
Hi there. Thank you, John. So I teach in suburban Maryland, and I got up at 4 a.m. this morning to get on a plane to discover the plane was canceled. But it's okay because I just got back from Europe 2 days ago, so I'm actually still on that time zone. So to me, it was fine. It's now about 8 o'clock in the evening, so we're good. Anyway, so I teach at River Hill High School. I teach music technology and advanced guitar there. We have 5 music staff in our school. It's 1,400 students. We have 5 music staff. You can do the math. We have a very active music department. We have bands, choruses, orchestras. We have theory classes, piano classes, guitar classes, jazz band, music technology. I have 125 music technology students. I have 30 guitar students. It's a huge scene, what we're doing there. And I'm also in charge of music technology for the entire county. My lab was built in 2007, and with the results that I'm getting from what I'm doing and the positive response that I've got from the students, I was given a huge boatload of money, which I wasn't allowed to keep. I had to go spend it on everybody else. So I write the curriculum for everybody else in terms of infusing music technology into what we're doing. And of course, a lot of my teachers are, oh, that's great, I love it, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to be fine, let's go ahead with it. And some people are like, I've never used Sibelius. I'm like, forget the Sibelius. It's not about Sibelius. It's about something completely and totally different. Music technology is about creativity, as in fact is all music. Very importantly. So today, I'm here to talk to you about creativity in a classroom and how you can use creativity to get your music department to the size that we have, or to get the kids so actively involved that they're making music and they're enjoying it, and that they're going on from there to major in music at major institutions throughout the United States. So, my email address is there. If you have any questions, please shoot them to me. I'm always happy to answer emails. Any questions about today's presentation? Please don't think that just because I've got on a plane tomorrow morning and I'm gone, that I'm not part of the further education of what is going on here. Because professional development without follow-up is malpractice. So always get in touch with me. It may even be a few years down the road and you think, wow, there's something I just remembered from that presentation. Find my email address, contact me. I'm happy to respond. And my website there, that website was actually built by my students. It was not built by me. It was a website because they were fed up with kids from other counties and stuff like that. Music technology, what's that? We don't know what it is. And so they responded with the big question, this is music tech, this is what we do. And they created a website in which they created examples of what we do in music tech. My start in teaching music comes from John Painter. John Painter, a lecturer at the University of York in England, who is the grandfather of how music education is done in England and in many, many places in Europe. In 1982, he published a seminal book called Music in the Secondary School Curriculum. I've read it every summer since I was in teacher training college, and I still don't completely understand it. It's brilliant. Okay? John Painter died 4 years ago on my birthday. I couldn't believe it. You know, Google kind of follows you and it gets to know what you're interested in, so it pushes the news towards you according to what you're interested in. I wake up on my birthday, John Painter died. Aw, what a shame. He was brilliant. And he said that there are 3 equal modes in our music learning. The creative mode, the recreative mode, make sure the hyphen goes in there, not recreative. It's not just a matter of putting on the stereo and relaxing, okay? Recreative, and the perceptual mode. And when we look at music education in the United States, one of those is hugely dominant. The recreative, right? And what we see around the rest of the world is that the recreative is only part of the whole. God forbid, though, you should go to some band directors and say, I want you kids to compose, or I want you kids to listen. Our band director was doing the English Folk Song Suite by Vaughan Williams. I said, I have a folk duo. I will come in and I will sing you my versions of those folk songs. I will sing you the originals. I'll sing you my versions. I'll tell you the stories. I'll tell you all about those. We can have the kids take those stories and they can make their own songs. And they can investigate the whole reason behind the English Folk Song Suite. Haven't got time. No time for that. Just follow the white stick and that'll be it. And what we end up with a load of students who are recreative and then start dropping by the wayside year after year because they suddenly find that this music thing, being in the band, is not quite as democratic as they hoped. Is being in the high school wind band as democratic as being a member of Black Sabbath? I don't think so. Black Sabbath were completely untrained, came together with accidental genius, and they're making much more money than my high school band. So, how this converts, and by the way, all the photographs which you see in this presentation are from my own students, my own school, and stuff like that. So you're seeing students that are working in my world. How this translates is that we have these equal skills, composing, performing, and listening. And each of these must belong together. We train too many people who are just performers, who have no knowledge of composition and cannot empathize with a composer, and cannot listen, and cannot perceive when they're listening. We have too many people who are composers who are not out there performing and finding out what things are really like. We have too many people who are listening who've never composed and performed in their lives, and they're all on YouTube. They're all slamming everything. They used to be called music critics. Now they're teenagers. You know? This boy, this is Johnny V. His name was John Valancourt. Came to me a few years ago. And a few weeks ago, he tweeted he was going to go down and play an open mic. I said, I'm going to go down and listen to Johnny. I called him Johnny V because it was easier to pronounce than Valancourt or Valancourt or Valancourt or wherever it is. Just called him Johnny V. He loved rock music. He loved Buddy Holly. He loved the 50s. He loved Brian Wilson. He loved the Beatles. Amazing kid. And I watched him play that night. And I thought, what is it that makes this 18-year-old kid want to get up there in a room full of strangers, pull out his guitar, and perform? What is his vulnerability? And what is his confidence that is there? Because this, to me, is what modern music education looks like. And this is what our result looks like. Not people in tuxedos following the white stick. Yes, there is a place for that. Absolutely, there's a place for that. But that place is not for everybody. What is it that convinced John that he wanted to do that? Let me play you a piece of music by John. This is a song called O Lida. John is playing every instrument. Everything's programmed. Everything's written by him. This is part of his work with me when he was in 10th grade. Let's just listen to John.
Well, I've been sitting here waiting too long, thinking of what to say. Playing out situations gone wrong and putting them on replay. I can't help but be forward about just how I feel. All the phrases I've ignored and the words that I've concealed. Will you run with me to the open, to a world that's much unspoken? Oh, leader, or maybe will you be my senorita? Well, I know it sounds unsure, but I truly believe that we're both seen as immature. Well, honey, we ain't naive to see how time is caught up with the generations past. Binge the whiskey from your cup and let's leave before long last. Before our days are numbered, for generations blunted. Oh, leader, or maybe will you seems to me the finer things just aren't that fine. But we don't need a diamond ring to get to a state line. Unspoken, oh leader, or maybe will you be my senorita? For our days are numbered, for generations plundered, oh leader, or maybe will you be my, or maybe will you be my, or maybe will you be my senorita?
Yeah, my job is grading stuff like that. Okay? John comes up with this sort of stuff, and he's not alone. Everything that you're going to see on a page like this is of similar quality. Yes, sir?
Really quick question. Did he sequence those drums, or did he play a kit?
He sequenced them. He did them all on a keyboard,
Okay.
okay, in Pro Tools.
Got it.
He basically took boom in Pro Tools and yeah, okay, brilliant kid. Anyway, back to where we were with Johnny V. Okay. John is composing, John is performing, and he is listening. His inspiration comes from the Beatles, it comes from Brian Wilson. He is a very all-rounded musician. And opening those three areas to him enables him to succeed. So, how do we, yes?
Okay, I'm really random follow-up question for my own curiosity. Was Johnny V involved in other performing ensembles in school?
No.
Okay.
He's in guitar class, he's in music tech class. Okay? He had tried as a 5th grader on the saxophone, and he wasn't very good at you play these dots in this order. That sort of kid, it didn't work for him. So he wanted to be in music, but saxophone wouldn't work for him. Okay? So how do we take this new paradigm of music education where we say, okay, we're composing, we're performing, and we're listening, when we've already got a paradigm in which we've got performing going on, hugely so. Okay? In the 20th century, this is the way it looks. And we're talking 30 years ago, 40 years ago, right? That's pretty much it. My wife, when she was in music, they sat on the stage and listened to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds every single music class for a year. That's all they did. Thankfully, she has a vocal degree from Westminster Choir College, but her music, which she got from outside, her singing she got from outside, but in school it was just about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Performance was the kids in the band, the orchestra chorus. And when we composed, we said, oh, okay, you're really good. You're very good at the horn. Here, have a piece of paper. Let's start composing. So we fixed this, and we did this in the US in the early 21st century. And we patted ourselves on the back and said, this is awesome, because we got all the kids that are involved in performance. And then we've got these kids that drop by the wayside on the way. Let's put them in music tech. They can compose. Brilliant. And somebody says to them, well, how are they going to perform? And suddenly people go, oh, I don't know. It's like, you know the 80s? How did you perform in the 80s? You pressed a button on a keyboard, right? Watch all those great Pet Shop Boys videos and stuff like that, you know? Performances. Max Modem, if any of you are familiar with Phineas and Ferb. Classic takeoff of the 1980s performance. You press one button, it sequences. Here's the problem. Here's where we go. By the way, that's my lab. 25-station iMac lab, okay, which I built in 2007. It's a wonderful space. That's about half the space. Over here is also a 16-station keyboard lab. So, and I also have a private little studio, an isolation studio, which the kids can use. So I'm very blessed in the equipment I have. Adding composition to your current music offerings is not enough. Just saying some kids are composing while others are performing and others are listening, that doesn't make it a three-way curriculum. You might have kids in the school who are specializing in one thing or the other, but that does not benefit any single individual child unless they are involved in all three. And we know that in high school scheduling, that's not going to work. We can't do that. Creativity, which we need for the 21st century learner, we need for the 21st century thinker, and we're the subject that people are hoping to look to provide those creative learners. We must lead the way. In 5 years, if your school is still only offering band, orchestra, and chorus, you're already behind. Because other schools are putting in music technology. Guitar is the fastest growing instrument in the United States. It is going to outstrip the band and the orchestra and chorus at the rate it's going. A creative approach is what we're going to need. If we give more onus to the student in performance, what does that mean in the band class? It doesn't mean that we throw out the band. It means that we have to add composition and creativity and more engaged listening to it. That we have to allow these kids to be creative and to do what they need to do. So, I got some examples here of what currently we might look at in terms of creativity. We know what listening used to look like. Okay? So let's go to something like this, and hopefully we can get the video to work. Thank you for the very good internet, by the way. Okay? Not sure if you're aware of a man called Mike Hammad, a brilliant man that started to do schematics of fish songs. Let me play you a little bit of this. You can go to the URL later on. This is different to the old style of listening where we wrote things down on a piece of paper, or we took a miniature score and we analyzed it. 25 lines of an orchestral score, and we marked it. How difficult is that for students? It's difficult. Maybe not for us who are musicians, but take your standard kid with all this code in front of them, okay? Look at what this guy does.
When you're listening to a great piece of music, what are you imagining? Mike Hammad draws while listening. As songs and live performances play, in this case it's one by the band Fish, he sketches in one furious stream.
Won't you step into the freezer? Caesar with a tweezer.
Lines, circles, and arrows all turn into something like an impressionistic flowchart, or what he calls a schematic. This is Ben Ratliff for the New York Times.
The process of doing this is completely meditative for me. I mean, when I'm in the middle of doing it, no thoughts about the outside world creep in any way.
Won't you step into the
This is how it
So when we
started.
listen to something in my classroom, we draw it. Now, I'm not talking about doodling and then coloring it in. We think about it the whole way through. We listen to it several times. We start to diagram. We get an idea of how that works. When we then go to perform, you'd be amazed at the number of kids who don't take the lead sheet or don't take a notation or don't take a tablature, but they take their diagram on stage. They find it easier then to recreate a performance by having drawn it themselves. They know what direction to go, what keys we're going into, all of that stuff because they have written it in relation to themselves. And so this graphical way of listening is just one possibility. It's creative, but it also gives a lot of ownership to the student to say, I want you to see this your way, and I want you to draw it that way. And the kids absolutely love then sharing with each other. I mean, it's not like the old days when you did a listening test and then you looked over at somebody else and said, oh, damn, they got 20 and I got 18. These days it's, wow, you did that? Oh, I never spotted that. Oh, yeah, it goes that direction. I got to add that in. I forgot that bit. That's awesome. Okay? How does this look in terms of composition? You know, composition is no longer just about people playing your tune. This is a nice example of a garage band tune with a visual attached. Kids these days often need to watch something when they're listening. What something like this does, it provides a bigger context for the piece of music because we are no longer just in an oral age. We are an increasingly visual age. This is a beautiful piece of music. It's about 8 minutes. And again, the URL will be on the slides. And you look at it. I seriously suggest you watch the whole thing. Put it on full screen, turn the lights off, burn some incense, do what you need to do. It's amazing. All right? What it is, it's a beautiful example of modern composition in our modern creative way. And it is itself a performance on YouTube. How does performance look today? Take a look at the stuff that is being going on with the stuff like, oh, come on. Not even a skip here. Who's hungry? Who's hungry? All right, here we go. Novation Launchpad. So much software is going towards that live performance. Nobody can tell me that's not musical. That's brilliant. And the kids are so fascinated by this. This is live performance. Live DJing today. It's very different than it used to be when we went to the disco when I was 10 years old and somebody would play one record and then play another. In actual fact, the whole DJ performance now is very much feeding the audience and going with the audience. You know, companies like Live, where they're bringing out the push, and we've got Native Instruments who are bringing out the machina and stuff like that. These are instruments which are moving towards live performance within technology. Just as musical as playing the clarinet. So those are all the sorts of things that are out there that the kids are looking at. That, by the way, is my little isolation studio. 4 practice rooms in school hardly get used, so I took one of them over.
That's a great idea.
I know, 4 practice rooms, and you only get one used at a time. So I went in there, I put foam all around it, because of course it was square as Liberace. You had to, the sound of it was ridiculous. So I went in, I put foam all over it, I put keyboards in there, I put smaller version of the monitors, which I have in the lab, okay, so they would get the same response, exactly the same software, and networked. That means that the kids can move stuff from that isolation studio to their station in the lab, and at any point, if I'm in class and they're down there and they have a question, they can instant message me through the computer, and I can give them a response. I can be teaching them at the same time. And in actual fact, if I really want to, I can look at what they're doing as well.
Like Google Messaging?
No, Apple Remote Desktop. Yep. So, to develop curriculum which teaches creativity. Teach the concepts within the contexts. Don't just say to the kids, write a song, and then assess the song according to whether you like it or not. The song is a vehicle in which to teach the musical concepts. Now that's tough to get your head around at first, especially since they both begin with C-O-N.
Is that another way of saying that, like, you choose the repertoire and then you teach everything within the context
Right.
of the repertoire?
Good band teachers, for example, will see their group and they say, what do these people need to work on? So what piece of music is going to get that skill for them? Okay? Rather than bad band directors who say, we want to do Angels in the Architecture with my 3rd grade band, thank you very much, you know? So projects, composition projects, live performance, songwriting, music mapping, research projects, all of those things are the big 3-week projects which my kids will have. And they will be told at the beginning of the year, this is what we're going to do. As I go through the year, I will tweak these according to what I know that the students need to learn. Within those, I am teaching musical concepts and I am teaching technical concepts. And within a unit, What I am doing is I am saying, I am really assessing this. I'm not assessing ultimately the emotional reason for your piece of music. I'm assessing the technical things that go on in there. Again, we have a question of how do we take a subjective subject like music and avoid a subjective grade, especially because kids don't really ultimately understand that process of grading. So this is what I would attempt to teach in a year. In my Music Tech 1 class, I would do all of this. And I would design my projects according to the class and where I'm going. When we get to assessment, I hope I'm preaching to the choir here. If I wasn't, you'd all have left anyway by now. Okay? Assessment is what you use to gauge where we are and how to develop where to go from there. The grade is a byproduct only of assessment. You do not assess just to see what the kid's grade is. Please don't ever do that. Assess to find out where your education can go next, where your students can learn, and your grade comes of that. Students, unfortunately, only understand the grade, and they really interpret that in very, very narrow and shallow ways. I always assess the concepts. What is it that I wanted you to learn? I'm not assessing the context. If a child plays me their song, it's a good song. That's de rigueur, that's gone, okay? Anything they produce is a statement of themselves. So I'm going to honor that, okay? And we know that something that some people may absolutely love, another person may hate, you know? I think, you know, Brian Wilson's music teacher's rejection of surfing was a subjective rejection. Of course, surfing went #1 in the nation about 4 weeks later or something after he got that famous F, okay? As a music teacher, you should be eclectic. You should be listening to everything. I do. I love everything. I'm a big Neil Sedaka fan. I really am. I have a Barney Best of. I love it. I listen to everything because I listen to what is good in everything I hear. And if I encourage my students to do that, you can't encourage your students to be open-minded if you are not yourself. And you must find the good in every piece of music because there is a reason why a person made a positive choice to do that and to put that for somebody else to listen to. And sometimes that requires you to really think within the piece of music, but it's there. And often that is part of the perceptual skill as well and part of the research skill. Perhaps you have to go and find out why Penderecki wrote the Threnody for the victims of Hiroshima. I know it's not easy to listen to, but it's a great piece of music when you really get it. It's amazing. You're not going to hear it on the radio dial, but you are going to get it when you appreciate what that was about. So you've got to avoid the subjective grade, okay? And what I find is that if I do peer assessment, if I give kids the same assessment rubric as I do, what I do is I send them on gallery walks. I say, everybody leave your station open with your composition, and I want you to go around 5 or 6 different computers today, and I want you to do that assessment rubric, and I want you to make comments. And what they realize as well is by the time they've gone around 5 or 6 and they get back to their station and 5 or 6 of their peers have written positive things about them, what a wonderful thing. And also they realize that peer is not grading me. That assessment is the same as Mr. McCready's assessment. It's got comments, it's done the rubric. The only difference that Mr. McCready has is he gets to add up the points and put the grade in. But they get away from the idea that the grade is just the reason for the assessment, or that Mr. McCready didn't like my piece of music, or that Mr. McCready doesn't like me, that's why I got a D. No, you got a D because you're lazy. You know, you didn't do anything.
Real quick, when you do the peer assessment, is it anonymous or do they see the name?
They see the name of the person, absolutely. My kids are very, very good with each other as well. We have a lovely school. Yes, it might not work in all things, especially if you've, well, I guess it can help to find the bully if you've got a bully in class. Look what he wrote on my piece of music, all right? Also, a mistake which I made when I was beginning, I didn't take time to assess every single context in class. If I had 25 kids in the class, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to listen to 25 projects in class? I'll listen to 6 and the rest of them I'll do after school. No, 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 no. If there are 25 songs in that class, take time in class to listen to all of those, because every single child has a right to have their song heard by everybody else. I will sometimes get some kids that come to me and say, can we do this privately after school? Absolutely. You're not confident in that, we can meet afterwards. But that's very, very rare. And I usually find if a kid is like that for the first couple of projects of the year, they usually, by later in the year, they start to want to become everybody. Don't force a child to have their music played, but make the time. And if that means that I have to push my curriculum back a couple of weeks because it's taking time to get through them, that's much better. Okay? Every child must be heard. Do you know about universal design for learning? Okay? So, universal design for learning. Universal design is an architectural term which basically means that when you build a building, you must think about all the possibilities of disabled people or differently abled people coming to that building. So if today you don't build a building with ramps on it, you are failing universal design. 50 years ago, we'd have a building and then they'd go, oh, we got to put a ramp in. Okay? Nowadays, with universal design, that means that buildings are supposed to be built thinking of all eventualities. Okay? Universal design for learning. Again, it's universal design within learning. And what that means is we've got to create a learning system where all students can be part of it. And that might mean different instruments, different ways of instruction, different things as regards how they input to the computer. You know, I have one child with one arm. He's a brilliant, brilliant kid. Okay? Completely redesigned his way of working so that the keyboard was out, but he used drum pads. But universal design for learning also means get that done or get those ideas in before the kids show up. Don't just look at your IEPs on the first day and say, oh, I got to fix that for you, I got to do that for you. You're already behind. You're already behind with some of those students. In the first day they come in and you go, oh, I didn't realize, this about you. Universal design for assessment, this is a completely new term. In fact, I'm launching it right now. Universal design for assessment means that what we need to do is design assessment so that it doesn't matter about any student's way to get to the context. They must be allowed to go within that. I find this particularly with gender. Boys and girls will have a different method of going about things. Say, for example, songwriting. If I was to say to the kids, okay, the first thing you need to do is create your beat. Okay? Whatever beat you want to do, I want you to choose that and you want you to record that. Boys are like, oh, cool, I can do that. Okay. And then you say, okay, we're going to put the bass on, when we're going to compose some chords above that, and then eventually we're going to try to get some melodies, and then we'll get some lyrics and stuff like that. Okay? In a songwriting unit, I will say, we're going to write songs. We're going to be done in 3 weeks. My boys will immediately start riffing. They will immediately start getting drums. And they will get their lyrics done 5 minutes before the date is due. And it's all about, ooh, baby, I miss you, will you dance with me at something that rhymes with miss you. And the girls, the first thing they do is they take out a journal and they start writing. Now, I'm talking general, okay? I'm not talking every single girl does that or every single boy does that. But if I assess it and say, well, you didn't do things in the right order, that's not fair. That's not fair to the way the approach is. The creative process is different for everybody. And in actual fact, what I do is I take the example of some of the great songwriters and I say, okay, look at Bob Dylan. He started with lyrics. Dylan is a top-down writer. He starts with his lyrics, he works from there. Eminem is the same. Starts from lyrics, moves down. Take a look at Paul Simon. Paul Simon is a bottom-up writer. When Paul Simon went to South Africa to do Graceland, the first thing he did is he started jamming rhythms. Graceland came out of the rhythms that he found when he was in South Africa. His stories about it came after the entire songs were written. The lyrics on top of Graceland are almost throwaway as regards to musical or exploration of South Africa. We are all different. And what works for Bob Dylan does not necessarily work for Brian Wilson, does not necessarily work for you, does not necessarily work for Johnny V, does not necessarily work for me, does not necessarily work for anybody in your class. So if you design assessment which allows the kids to do what they can. By the way, each of those stands in that performance has something different on them. It's the thing about the black stands. You can't actually see which of the kids there have tab, which of them have notation, which of them have chicken scratchings. Every student, in this case, in any ensemble that I'm working with, has in front of them not the dots, which I gave out, but their own representation of what they need to do to perform that. Because what are we ultimately looking for? We're looking for great performance. We're not looking for the great skill of coding tab or notation or whatever it is. And unfortunately, there are thousands of people that think that music education is about learning to code and decode, which it isn't. Okay? This is the sort of way I would do a project. Project objective, and what I will say is this is what I want. Okay? And again, this will be in the video, which you will see, and I'll be happy to share this with you later and stuff like that. So this is a slide that will go up on my whiteboard, on my projector, during the project. It also means that if any administrator comes into my room, oh, what are we doing today? It's right there, okay? Because I never write the objectives on the board, and I've told my administration that. I have many, many educational reasons for that, okay? So the kids know what they're doing anyway, you know? So the kids know we're composing, we're making music, whatever. But this tells the kids in their first project what it is that they need to be looking at. It doesn't tell me, write a really good piece of music. It gives me the concepts, and the context is at the top as the objective. There is a perceiving stage where every child will respond to their process. And this is a very important part of what I do, that they understand the process they went through and they write about this creative process. And my students and students in other schools where we are doing this throughout the county, across huge different demographics, kids are writing 3 to 4 paragraphs easily in an exercise like this, when they are involved with the process, when they are asked to document it. It also helps their learning because they solidify by writing or typing or whatever it is that they want to do, what they're doing. I've also had students who have said, do you mind if I record that at home and give it to you? Absolutely. So I've had students that will come in to me and they have a jump drive with a recording of them telling me what was going on in their composition. Very interested in what is happening with a friend who teaches up in the University of Singapore. He does a thing where the kids are on wikis and they're producing screenshots and sound bites of their project as it goes. And this is something very exciting. I'd love to go towards this next year. And last week when I was in Europe, I was sitting with some people talking about doing director's cuts, how we do that with films. Sometimes we take a film for assessment, and then we do a director's cut of the film so that the examiner watches the director's cut as well as and they're commenting the whole way. And sometimes the film can stop, and sometimes it can rewind, and sometimes it can go forward. And so I'm thinking in the future, I may go towards a director's cut of music. Here's my performance, and here's me commenting. We have this available to us in music technology, in any technology, to use screencast software, Screenium or ScreenFlow, and the kids could really get into that. In actual fact, typing it, that's really old school. You know, that's why I want to move forward. When the kids are graded, they get this in their folder at the start of every project, so they know exactly what they need to do. They know what the point system is, they know what they need to do, and they will look at that almost like their check sheet. But again, notice it's not in order. It can be whatever order. So long as you complete everything in there, you're going to have a great chance of getting a good score. And most of my kids who are interested in what they're doing, which the majority of them are, they will work through this and they will get as close as they can to 100. And again, when we do peer review, the peers will look at exactly the same thing and will grade each other according to that. The notes is my space for actually being subjective and to maybe make some subjective comments, but they don't create the grade. The grade is on the concepts that we have learned within the context. I love this quote. because it just sums up what has happened to my teaching since I started to adopt creativity. I went whole hog into this 10 years ago. Got a boatload of computers and started getting kids composing. And it's just changed my whole approach to education. I'm finally beginning to understand what Painter was going on about. I'm seeing huge changes in kids. I'm seeing huge changes in the temperature of music in the school because these kids are so involved. There you see a couple of kids on their graduation. Yes, we're all wearing matching bow ties. There were 11 kids that chose to wear matching bow ties with Mr. McCready for their graduation. And 8 of those are going on to study music at tertiary level. Matt on the left is going to Elon to double major in jazz guitar and music technology. Ryan on the right had no clue what he wanted to do when he came to school. He now has a transport tattooed on his arm. Seriously, I've never seen a Pro Tools transport tattoo. I said, is that temporary? He said, no, it's real. I said, well, I'm really looking forward to the day when Pro Tools manages to go subcutaneous, so you'll be ahead of us all. He's serious. I'll show it to you on my iPad later if you want. He is going to Middle Tennessee State to study music technology and recording. Okay? And those are the sort of kids who are fired up about it all. Let me take you back, though. I know I'm almost out of time, and I want to leave time for questions in case you have any. This guy. Something I didn't tell you about this guy. Johnny V has high-functioning autism. And the reason I sat there in that bar at that night wondering why Johnny V was putting himself on the line was not just because he was an ordinary kid. It's because there was an autistic kid who wanted to communicate through his music. And that's what Johnny V does. Johnny V, like I said, tried to play the saxophone. But when he tried to play the saxophone, they wouldn't let him say what he wanted to say in the saxophone. He wanted to play the saxophone because he saw it was the only instrument in the band that he also observed in 1950s rock and roll. He wanted to get up there and do the saxophone solo to Little Richard tunes. And when he got into the band, they said, you've got to learn to do it this way. Johnny V, his mother wanted to homeschool him. His mother tried alternative schooling for him. His mother then eventually brought him to River Hill, and I took him under my wing and I said, this is a great kid. That mother is actually a member of the Board of Education, and that has unbelievably helped in terms of getting music creativity into all the other schools because she is the champion of what music and creativity can do for every single child. Not just the child who's sitting first chair in the orchestra, not just the child who's singing with the choir. It'll help them as well. It's not an alternative to those programs. Those programs are great. But what creativity does, it allows all children to have the possibility to explore, to have their own voice. Because what Johnny V wants is his own voice. The guy could not find his way out of a paper bag with a map. He is totally disorganized. His backpack is a trail of destruction. He even failed to get into the University of Hartford because he made a mistake on his application form. He was accepted on his SATs. He was accepted on his college essay. He said, I got into the University of Hartford. That's great. That's so awesome. I said, when'd you audition for the School of Music? Oh, they never asked me for one. I said, John, if you're doing music, there's got to be an audition. You've got to take your guitar up. No, there isn't one. He went up for orientation. He said, yeah, I accidentally checked School of Architecture instead of School of Arts. He had got the application form wrong. But man, can he write music. So he came back. He's doing 2 years at Howard Community College, and then he's going to go back and he's going to try it all again. And in actual fact, he's going to be ready for it. And the creativity has allowed him to do that. And that's what all my kids have experienced. And that's what I think we need to do for music education for the future, is to allow people to be creative. Brian Wilson was failed when he was at school. Thankfully, he turned past it. Can you imagine what would have happened if the Beatles or the Beach Boys or Neil Sedaka had sent their compositions in to be graded? I mean, how many times can we write consecutive fifths over Black Sabbath stuff? You know, how many times can we squash all over that in the name of what we think music was about and still is. And like you said, every theory teacher that thinks they have the best way to do it, you know? The future is letting kids be creative. That's going to bring them into a creative new century. And I think that's what we need to push towards. I know I've gone at you really fast for the last 45 minutes. Are there questions? Anything you want to know? Yes, sir.
You use Pro Tools primarily and GarageBand?
I use GarageBand in the first half of the year with my Music Tech 1s, and then I switch them into Pro Tools. I don't switch them into Pro Tools first because it can be imposing, and I want them to learn simple things like panning, EQ, and compression, and filters, and those simple things without having to worry about how it looks in Pro Tools. Once they get into Pro Tools, they love it, and they stay in Pro Tools through their second, sometimes third, fourth years. A lot of times they're also using Studio One at home, they're using Logic at home, they're using Live at home, they're using Cubase, or as one of my kids once said, Cubase. Mr. McCready, I got this new program, it's called Cubase. Yeah, right. Oops. Once they learn the concepts, then they find it very easy to translate that. It's not easy to dive into Pro Tools at the start, but I'll get so many concepts into GarageBand, and we really squeeze the juice out of that lemon in about 6 months, that then they're able to move on pretty easily to Pro Tools. My kids I use all sorts of different input methods. I don't just use keyboards. Keyboards are only the black and white keyboards because it was the MIDI Manufacturers Association, who were all keyboard companies, that made it that way. They got the monopoly on it. But now I've got kids who are wind players who are playing EWIs and using those for input, including doing drum patterns. MIDI guitar has just made a huge step forward with Fishman, the Fishman triple play. Any of you who are guitar players, you must get yourself a triple play. It's $400. It's amazing for MIDI guitar. And I have 3 of these in my school, and the kids that are guitar players, which is many of them, are doing MIDI with guitar, MIDI drum pads, all sorts of different MIDI devices which are getting past the old idea that it's about those black and white keys.
Are you using the microphone and live instrument tracking?
Yes, absolutely. They learn to record. And every station has a 2-input, 2-output audio interface. Plus we have the isolation studio for them to go down and to record. I use microphones which reject a lot of bleed. Very simple Shure PG48. So if a lot of people are recording in the room at the same time, so long as they've got good microphone technique, and of course we also learn about gating. I'm able to have a lot of kids record in the one space at the one time, but if it's something which really requires good recording, then I have condensers and ribbon microphones for them down in the studio, and they're able to use those. And then that's again an extension of what they're able to do. We have like 2 recesses a week called Hawk Time, which is 35 minutes where the kids can do what they want. It's the best thing to happen to our school since they put doors on the front of it. And the kids are often coming and saying, can I record? Can I go somewhere and do something? And they absolutely love it. And they'll stay after school sometimes for hours to record. I even had a kid that skipped school one day just so he could record. His math teacher found him in there in 6th period. But the problem was I had him 1st period. So he came to 1st period class. I also had him 4th period. He came to 4th period class. But he quit. He skipped out periods 2, 3, 5, and 6. And he got his mom to write him a note that he'd been sick. But the silly boy had shown up to my classes, so I'd marked him present. That was a tough one to sort out. The kids absolutely love the possibility of recording. And they want to learn to record. They want to learn to record properly. They're amazing at watching videos. And I use the Bobby Ozinski books, Mixing Engineer's Handbook, Recording Engineer's Handbooks. Bobby wrote the Bible on recording. Amazing, amazing guy. And they even send Bobby emails and stuff like that. They follow his blog. They just want to know everything there is to know about recording because they want to get their music kept for the next generation. You know, why did people learn to write, with notation in the 17th century? Because they wanted to record it for somebody else to use, okay? In the modern world, notation is great, but it's not everything. And there are many, many composers, many, many people out there, such as Vangelis or Paul McCartney, who can't read or write very well, And Vangelis is an amazing musician, but, put a Liszt sonata in front of him, like, I don't know. I don't know how this works. Paul McCartney has to have people write the stuff down for him when he did stuff like the Liverpool Oratorio and things like that. Notation isn't everything, especially since music actually predates notation, right? Yeah. Notation is a modern construct in the whole world of music. It's a modern construct, so. Yes, ma'am?
So what do you do with these kids who you say are going into music now? Where do they go to school if they can't read music? Or if they don't have the tools?
Oh, they have the tools. They're musicians. They're fully musicians.
Okay, so
They're going to Frost. They're going to Frost. They're going to NYU. They're going to Skidmore. They're going to Peabody. They're going to Northwestern. They're going to Indiana. They're going all over the place.
So they eventually learn the notation? Or?
They will learn what's necessary for them. Has Paul McCartney eventually learned notation?
But some schools are very specific about.
Then that's not the school for them.
That's what I'm asking. So you
Yeah.
you send them to specific schools.
Would they choose schools according to what they want to do. And if they look at a system, I mean, I had a kid that wanted to go somewhere to play guitar. He's a jazz guitar player. He looked at the list of requirements. Play a piece by Barrios, a piece by Soar, and a piece by Granados. I said, that's not your school. But I can learn to play those. I know you can learn to play those. But they're not going to teach you jazz guitar at that school. Go somewhere else. So again, you're going to have many, many schools. I have a lot of kids in Nashville. Nashville is Belmont, Middle Tennessee State, who are working down there and getting gigs in Nashville and stuff like that. They can read on a rudimentary level. They can read enough to get them through a lead sheet. They're not standing there with a full score of the Rite of Spring conducting it. But they are writing enough so that when they write something down, somebody else can play their stuff. That's important. That's what ultimately getting stuff down is about, or playing it to somebody, or talking through somebody. Notation's not the be-all and end-all of music, not by a long stretch. There's so many more skills that we should have as musicians than that.
I'm sorry, I keep asking
No, you're fine.
more and more questions. When this program started, because I'm trying to develop a program like this, did you find that there was resistance within from more traditional band orchestra?
There are some that don't get it. I have one school that I'm struggling with because they keep saying they keep not running music tech or guitar class. And there is the old school. But thankfully, we are now seeing a group of new music teachers coming through. We are seeing the first bunch of music teachers coming through college who actually had music tech in their high school.
Yeah.
And they realize that. It's the people that are there 25, 30 years and are getting close to retirement, and they look at this lab going in and they say, how's that going to make my band sound better? Well, it's not. They also can't think that through in terms of what that will do for their program. So that there is resistance. But I'm like, how many years until you retire? Okay, you've done a great job, 25 years. We applaud you. Rock on. But we're going to move through. Yeah. And the cycle's going to move through. And nobody's... once they eventually do realize, well, you know what? We suddenly put 2 music technology classes in, and my band's at the same number. How's about that? They didn't steal my kids. Well, duh. So you will meet with some resistance, but eventually it really washes out. Yes, ma'am.
This is all well and good, but if you don't know how to use GarageBand, how did you learn to use GarageBand? I mean, I've used it just a little bit, but I'm not real sure.
Sites like Dr. Kovacs was talking about earlier, lynda.com, berkeley.com. There's all sorts of online places where you can go and learn stuff. YouTube. My kids will learn stuff on YouTube. The stuff is out there. You just got to search for the tutorials.
It seems like it's time, I know my job takes me, I'm at school in the morning, I'm there until 6, 7 o'clock at night, just doing my everyday thing, just trying to learn.
But nobody's saying that you should teach Pro Tools.
No.
We're just saying to introduce.
But I'm just saying, can you do something like this and kids just kind of take off on it themselves?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
That's
the joy of it.
But how do I know?
Have you asked your kids to compose?
My band kids, no.
Go for it. Go for it. Ask them. Get Noteflight. Get them all on Noteflight. Or get them all on Foundation. It's free.
We have reading music, but we have programs in our computers that have writing notation, and we have GarageBand and all our stuff. I just don't know. where do you find the time to give it to them? I mean, during the day, I see them one period a day, every other day, and a lesson once a week. You know, where I mean, I think it's all great. I love all this. I mean, that's why I'm here. But just to find the time and the energy. I mean, and I spend hours after.
Yeah. I mean, that's common. We're all at that. Like, is there the time in the day to do all these things?
Top teachers, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
you're doing extra stuff.
And sometimes it's a matter of reassessing your priorities and saying, do I need to really do grade 4 literature? Do I need to do this? Do I need to, you know, what ultimately is my goal with my kids? To me, my goal is turning on that creativity. And that is huge.
I feel like if I put this in front of them, what do I do with it? Because I don't know. I mean, like, just have them, how did you get that kid to write all that stuff? I mean, sing that song, I thought it was great. I mean, I have a little pop band that I work with after school, just started it up, an extra thing to do. And, you know, I found stuff online that says notepaper.com.
Do you know why they offer you a starter when you go to a restaurant? It's to make you hungry for the entree. When you give children enough of a start on stuff, they start to get hungry to find out more. And they are brilliant at finding things on the internet better than I. And they will start to find things. Once you just open that door to say, I want you to do this, they will start to say, oh, I want to explore. I want to find out more. Education is opening a door to learning.
Let me suggest that we continue
absolutely.
this discussion in the period after, because there's a couple of other things I want to be sure that we
Absolutely.
alluded to before we took off. Let's just thank Richard for that.
Thank you.